My name is Catherine Daniels. I'm 22 years old, a law school valedictorian, and I thought I was everything my father could have dreamed of. With my deep brown eyes, that people said sparkled with intelligence, and a smile that could light up any room, I had spent my entire life making my father proud until the day he disowned me. What you're about to hear is the most insane revenge story ever caught on camera. How I discovered my hero father was actually a monster, and the night I brought his entire empire crashing down in front of the whole world. If you love stories like this, click the subscribe button for more intense stories like this, and comment where you are watching from. It all started 3 weeks earlier, when this same man looked at me and said 5 words that would seal his own fate. Growing up without a mother, I'd learned to be both daughter and best friend to Rev. Dr. Jeremiah Daniels, one of the most respected pastors in Georgia. Every Sunday, I'd sit in that front pew, watching him command the pulpit like he was born for it. And I believed he was. My father is my hero, I'd tell anyone who'd listen. He raised me alone, never remarried, and devoted his life to God and to me. I had my mother's gentle spirit, but my father's steel backbone. I didn't know it yet, but I was going to need every ounce of that strength for what was coming. My childhood was picture perfect on the surface. Father-daughter camping trips, helping him prepare sermons, being the pride of the congregation. He would beam with pride when people complimented my intelligence and character. "She's going to change the world," he'd say, his hand on my shoulder. "Everything I've worked for, she'll carry forward." I believed every word. I studied hard, got into law school on full scholarship, graduated summa cum laude. Every achievement was for him. Every success was our shared victory. Because on this particular graduation day, as I prepared to give my valedictorian speech to 3,000 people, I had no idea that the man I'd spent 22 years loving was about to shatter my world into a million pieces. The auditorium was packed. My best friend Maria sat with her grandmother in the 3rd row, beaming with pride. The live stream had over 50,000 viewers. I was a local celebrity, the pastor's daughter who'd conquered law school. I had been up since 5 a.m. practicing my speech one final time. I'd written and rewritten it a dozen times, wanting every word to be perfect. This wasn't just my moment. It was our moment, father and daughter together. I stepped up to the podium, my heart racing with excitement, not nerves. I looked out at the sea of faces and found my father sitting in the VIP section, his chest puffed out with pride, wearing his best suit. "Thank you," I began, my voice strong and clear. "Today isn't just about academic achievement. It's about the people who believed in us when we couldn't believe in ourselves." The crowd was hanging on every word. I had always been a natural speaker. I'd inherited that from my father. I want to dedicate this moment to the most important person in my life. My father, Rev. Dr. Jeremiah Daniels, who taught me that integrity isn't just what you do when people are watching, it's who you are when nobody's looking. He showed me that strength comes from helping others, that success means lifting up your community, and that love means sacrifice. The crowd was nodding, smiling. This was beautiful. Exactly what a graduation speech should be. The dean stepped forward with a smile. "Catherine, we have a special surprise. We've invited your father to present your award personally." My face lit up like Christmas morning. This wasn't planned, it was pure joy. I looked at my father, expecting to see the same excitement, the same love I felt. My father rose from his seat, 6'2" with silver hair and the kind of presence that commanded respect. The crowd erupted in applause. He was beloved in this community, a pillar of faith and morality. But as he walked toward the stage, something was wrong. I could see it in his eyes. They were cold, distant. Not the warm, proud father I expected. His jaw was set, his movements stiff. He climbed the steps slowly, deliberately. I reached out to hug him, my arms open, my face radiant with love and expectation. He stepped back. The crowd went quiet. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Something was very wrong. "I cannot," he said, his voice carrying across the now silent auditorium, "present this award to someone who has brought shame to my family name." My smile froze on my face. The words didn't compute. "Dad? Catherine Daniels is no longer my daughter." The words hit like a physical blow. My legs almost gave out. The auditorium seemed to tilt. "She has dishonored everything I taught her, Everything our family stands for. She has used her body to advance her academic career, sleeping with her professors for grades. The auditorium erupted. People were standing, shouting, phones were recording. The livestream viewer count was climbing rapidly as word spread on social media. I stood there, shaking, tears streaming down my face. Dad, that's not true. You know that's not true. My voice was barely audible over the chaos, but the microphones picked it up. I looked so small suddenly, so broken in my white graduation gown. Please, I whispered, don't do this. But my father looked at me with genuine disgust, turned his back, and walked off the stage, leaving me standing there in front of thousands of people, publicly destroyed by the one person who was supposed to protect me. Can you imagine? The one person who was supposed to love you unconditionally, humiliating you in front of the entire world? Share your thoughts in the comment section. The video went viral within hours. #Catherine Daniels was trending on Twitter. The comments were brutal. I hadn't left my apartment in 3 days. Maria had been bringing me food, but I could barely eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's cold stare, heard those words, "No longer my daughter." The phone rang constantly. Reporters, church members, classmates. I ignored them all. My law school withdrew their job placement assistants. 3 internship offers were quietly rescinded. The scandal was too much for conservative law firms to handle. Maria sat on the couch next to me, watching me waste away. "Catherine, you have to eat something. You have to fight this." Fight what? My own father? The man who raised me? If he says I'm guilty, who's going to believe me? I believe you. Your professors believe you. Everyone who actually knows you believes you. But I was drowning in shame and confusion. How had my perfect relationship with my father turned into this nightmare? Finally, on the 4th day, Maria had enough. "Get up. Get dressed. We're going to his house, and you're gonna demand answers." The drive to my childhood home felt like a funeral procession. Every street corner held memories. Learning to ride a bike while my father ran beside me, walking to church hand in hand, coming home from dates to find him waiting up with hot chocolate and questions about my evening. Finally, I worked up the courage to ring the doorbell. When my father opened the door, he looked tired, older somehow. "What do you want, Catherine?" Even hearing my name from his lips felt like a small victory. "I want to understand. I want to know what I did that was so terrible you had to destroy me in front of the world." My father was in his study, the one with the floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and the massive oak desk where he'd written hundreds of sermons about love and forgiveness. I used to do my homework in this room, curled up in the corner chair while he worked. "Dad, please, just tell me why. What did I do?" He didn't look up from his papers. "You know what you did." "No, I don't. I never slept with anyone for grades. You raised me better than that. You know me better than that." That's when he finally looked at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before: genuine disgust. An anonymous letter came to the church board, detailed descriptions of your activities with Professor Stephen Morrison. Multiple witnesses, they have photos, Catherine. My mind was racing. Professor Morrison? I'd taken his constitutional law class, gotten an A based on my merit. I'd barely spoken to him outside of class discussions. "Dad, this is insane. Someone is lying. Someone wants to hurt us." The evidence is overwhelming. The board met in emergency session. I had to choose between my ministry and my shame of a daughter. I chose God. The words cut deeper than any physical wound could have. You chose your reputation over your daughter. I chose truth over lies. You're not welcome in this house anymore. I stood there for a moment, looking at this man who'd raised me, who'd taught me to pray, who'd been my whole world. And I realized I was looking at a stranger. But as I turned to leave, something caught my eye. A birth certificate was sticking out from under some papers on his desk. Without thinking, I grabbed it. The name on it made my blood run cold. Noah Daniels. Father, Jeremiah Daniels. Mother, Adana Daniels. My father had another child, and the mother had his last name. "What is this?" I demanded, holding up the certificate. His face went white. "Put that down." "Noah Daniels? Who is Noah Daniels? Who is Adana Daniels? Why does she have our last name?" I said, "Put it down." He lunged for the paper, but I was quicker. "You have another son? You have a son you never told me about? And his mother was a Daniels?" "Catherine, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You're a liar. You've been lying to me my entire life. I was backing toward the door, the birth certificate clutched in my hand. If you know what's good for you, he said, his voice low and threatening, you'll forget you ever saw that. Some secrets are meant to stay buried. But it was too late. I was already out the door, my mind reeling with questions. What would you do if you discovered your whole life was a lie? Let us know in the comments below and hit the subscribe button if you're enjoying this story. I sat in my car outside my father's house, staring at the birth certificate with shaking hands. The date showed this Noah was born just 1 year before me, which meant my father had been with another woman while married to my mother. But why did she have his last name? But who was Adana Daniels? And where was this son he'd never mentioned? I drove straight to Maria's apartment. She took one look at my face and knew something major had happened. Maria, I need your help, and I need you to promise me you won't try to talk me out of this. I showed her the birth certificate. Her eyes went wide. Don't tell me to let it go. He destroyed me in front of the world. He threw away 22 years like they meant nothing. I need to know who I'm really dealing with. We started with the hospital listed on the birth certificate. Most of the staff from 1999 had retired or moved on, but we found one nurse, Mrs. Betty Johnson, who is now working at a clinic across town. When I called, Mrs. Johnson was hesitant. I don't really remember much from that time. Please, this is about my family. I just need to understand what happened. When I showed up at the clinic, Mrs. Johnson's face went white as a sheet. You're Jeremiah's daughter, she whispered. You look just like your mother. I need to know about Noah Daniels and Adana Daniels. She pulled me into an empty examination room and closed the door. Child, some secrets are buried for good reason. My father just disowned me publicly. I think I deserve to know what kind of man I've been defending my whole life. She was quiet for a long moment, wrestling with herself. I could see the fear in her eyes. Adana was 19. Just a girl, really. Sweet thing, sang in the church choir like an angel. Your father was married to her then, legally married. You see, child, your mother wasn't his first wife. My heart was pounding. What do you mean? Your father was a small-time preacher back then, struggling to make ends meet. He and Adana were newlyweds, and when she got pregnant with Noah, they were so happy. But then, Mrs. Johnson's voice dropped to a whisper. Then what? Then your father met your mother, Stella Montgomery. The Montgomery family, old money, owned half the county, had connections everywhere. Stella's father was looking for a respectable pastor to marry his daughter, someone who could elevate the family's social standing. The room was spinning. So what did my father do? He abandoned them. Just disappeared one day. Left Adana and baby Noah with nothing. Had their marriage annulled quietly, claimed it was never valid. Then he married your mother in a grand ceremony that made all the society pages. I felt sick. But what happened to Adana and Noah? Adana tried to fight it, tried to prove they were legally married, that Noah was his rightful son. But the Montgomery family had lawyers, influence, money. They had her declared mentally unstable, said she was a delusional woman making up stories to extort money from their new son-in-law. I felt sick. Where is she now? There's a women's shelter in rural Georgia. Haven't heard from her in years, but that's where she was last time someone mentioned her name. As I left the clinic, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. If you know what's good for you, you'll stop digging into things that don't concern you. But it was too late for threats. I had already seen enough to know that the man who raised me was capable of destroying lives. The pieces are starting to come together, but what I discovered next changed everything. Stay with us. You won't believe what happens next. The drive to rural Georgia took me 3 hours. 3 hours to think about everything I thought I knew about my father. Every Bible verse he'd taught me, every lesson about integrity and truth. It was all contaminated now. I thought about my mother, Stella, who died when I was just 8. Had she known about Adana? Had she died not knowing her husband had betrayed his first family? When I found Adana sitting on a bench in the shelter's garden, feeding birds from a small bag of seeds, I could see she was probably in her early 40s. But she looked much older. Her hair was gray, her hands shook slightly, and her eyes had the distant look of someone who'd seen too much pain. Adana? She looked up, and when she saw my face she gasped, It was as if she recognized me. "You have his eyes," she whispered, "but your mother's kindness." I sat down slowly. "You knew my mother?" "Stella was a good woman. She didn't deserve what he did to her." Her voice was soft, broken. "Neither did you." "Adana, I found Noah's birth certificate. I need to know what really happened." For the first time in years, someone was asking Adana to tell her truth. And slowly, painfully, she did. "I was 19, married to your father for just 8 months when Noah was born. We were so happy then. He was a small church pastor. We lived in a tiny apartment, but we had love and faith and dreams." My stomach was already turning. "What happened?" "Your father met your mother at a charity gala. Stella Montgomery, her family owned banks, real estate, had political connections. Within weeks, he was different. Cold, distant." Her voice broke completely. I reached out and took her hand. Then one morning, I woke up and he was gone. Just gone. Left a note saying our marriage was a mistake, that God had shown him a different path. 3 days later, I saw his engagement announcement to Stella Montgomery in the newspaper. "What happened when you tried to fight it?" "I tried to tell people we were legally married, that Noah was his legitimate son. But the Montgomery family had money, power, influence. They had teams of lawyers who said our marriage was invalid due to some technicality. When I kept fighting, when I wouldn't disappear quietly." She was crying now, understanding the full scope of my father's betrayal. "They had me committed to a psychiatric hospital. Said I was a delusional woman making up stories to extort money from their new son-in-law. Said the stress of being an unwed mother was making me imagine a marriage that never existed." I was crying now, understanding the full scope of my father's evil. "And Noah?" "They took him away from me while I was in the hospital, said I was an unfit mother. I spent 3 years in that place before they finally let me out. When I got out, I discovered your father had legally adopted Noah out to a family in Alabama. I had no rights, no way to find him. The Montgomery money made sure of that." I reached into my purse and pulled out a photo. It was Noah's current photo that I'd found through a private investigator. "Adana, this is your son. His name is Noah, and he's 23 years old. He's alive, and he's a good man." She stared at the photo, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in decades, she smiled. "He looks like my father. My daddy was a mechanic too. I made a decision that would change all our lives." "Adana, would you like to meet him?" Noah Williams. He'd taken his foster family's name, worked at Pete's Auto Shop in Montgomery, Alabama. I had found him through a private investigator, but I'd driven the 4 hours to meet him in person. Some conversations couldn't happen over the phone. I watched him for a few minutes through the garage bay window. He was tall like my father, but his movements were gentle, careful. He was explaining something to a customer, pointing out parts under the hood, and I could see he was patient and honest. Nothing like my father. When he finished with the customer, I approached. "Noah Williams?" He looked up, wiping his hands on a rag. "That's me. You need work done on your car?" "Actually, I need to talk to you about something important. My name is Catherine Daniels." I watched his face carefully, but the name meant nothing to him. Of course it wouldn't. He'd been told he was abandoned by unknown parents. "This might sound crazy, but I have reason to believe we're related." Noah raised an eyebrow. "Related how?" I pulled out the birth certificate. "I think you're my half-brother." Noah stared at the document, his expression shifting from confusion to shock to anger. "Jeremiah Daniels? The pastor? That's supposed to be my father? You know who he is?" "Lady, half the South knows who Jeremiah Daniels is. He's on TV, has that mega church, writes books. What kind of sick joke is this?" I understood his reaction. I pulled out my phone and showed him the viral video of my graduation day humiliation. "This is me. This is what he did to me 3 weeks ago. And now I'm learning that destroying lives is kind of his specialty." Noah watched the video, his anger shifting to something else. Recognition, maybe. The way families sometimes see themselves in each other even when they don't want to. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I found your biological mother. And because I think we both deserve to know the truth about who we really are." Noah was quiet for a long time, just staring at the birth certificate. "I always wondered, you know? Foster families, they were good to me, but there was always this hole. Like I was missing pieces of myself." "Noah, there's something else you need to know. About what he did to your mother." I told him everything. Adana's story, the abandoned first marriage, the cover-up by the Montgomery family money. With each detail, Noah's jaw got tighter, his hands clenched into fists. He was married to her. Yes, legally married. Then he abandoned his wife and son for money and status. Yes. And used his new family's wealth to destroy any evidence we ever existed. Yes. Noah was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at me with eyes that reminded me of my own. Eyes that had seen too much, learned too much, been hurt too much. "What do you want to do about it?" I smiled for the first time in weeks. "I want to introduce you to your mother, and then I want to make him pay for what he did to all of us." Can you believe the level of evil we're dealing with here? But Noah and I were about to turn the tables in a way that would shock the world. Don't go anywhere. The revenge is about to begin. The meeting between Noah and Adana happened at the shelter, with me facilitating. When Adana saw her son for the first time in 23 years, she collapsed into his arms, sobbing. Noah, this tough mechanic who'd never known maternal love, cried like a baby. "I'm so sorry," Adana kept saying. "I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you." "Mom," Noah said, and it was the first time he'd ever said that word and meant it. "None of this was your fault." But I was already thinking strategically. The emotional reunion was beautiful, but it wasn't enough. My father had destroyed 3 lives and was walking around free, respected, powerful. "We need evidence," I told them. "Real evidence that will stand up in court." Over the next 2 weeks, we built our case like a legal team. DNA test. Noah's paternity was confirmed. My father was definitely his father. First, I discovered the original marriage certificate between Jeremiah and Adana, and the fraudulent annulment papers. Then I discovered that my father had used Montgomery family money and church funds to pay for Adana's institutionalization and Noah's illegal adoption proceedings. Once word spread quietly through the community, we discovered 2 other families my father had abandoned in his climb to power and wealth. Adana, despite her trauma, was lucid and compelling when she told her story on camera. But I wanted more than just criminal charges. I wanted public justice. I wanted him to feel the same humiliation he'd put me through. That's when I learned about the Global Faith Leadership Gala, an annual event where my father would be receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award in front of 2,000 religious leaders from around the world. The event was in 3 weeks. I had an idea. What if I asked to speak? What if I requested a chance to publicly reconcile with my father? Noah looked at me like I was crazy. "After what he did to you. Think about it. His ego won't be able to resist. He'll think he's won, that I'm coming back to apologize publicly. He'll want the whole world to see his wayward daughter begging for forgiveness." I called my father's assistant and humbly requested a chance to reconcile publicly at the gala. Just as I predicted, his ego made the decision for him. "Dr. Daniels is pleased that you've come to your senses," the assistant said. "He'll give you 5 minutes to apologize to him and the faith community." 5 minutes. I smiled. 5 minutes was all I needed. What's about to happen at this gala will go down in history. Subscribe now so you won't miss more stories like this. The Georgia World Congress Center was magnificent that night. 2,000 of the most influential religious leaders in the world were gathered for what they thought would be a celebration of faith and reconciliation. I arrived early, wearing the same white dress I'd worn for my graduation, cleaned, pressed, and perfect. I wanted everyone to remember this image. Noah and Adana were in the audience, dressed nicely, but anonymously. I had arranged for a legal team to be present, ready to serve papers. I'd also tipped off several journalists who specialized in religious scandals. My father was in his element, working the room in his custom-tailored suit, accepting congratulations on his Lifetime Achievement Award. He looked like a king holding court. At 8:30 p.m. I was introduced. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest tonight. Catherine Daniels, daughter of our honoree, has asked for a few minutes to address her father and this distinguished assembly." I walked onto the stage to polite but uncertain applause. The viral video of my humiliation was still fresh in everyone's minds. I stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, then directly at my father sitting in the front row. "Thank you for allowing me this opportunity," I began, my voice strong and clear. 3 weeks ago, my father made a public declaration about my character and my worthiness to bear his name. He was smiling smugly, thinking this was going exactly as planned. Tonight, I want to talk about names and legacies and what we pass down to our children. My voice was getting stronger, more confident. My father taught me that integrity isn't just what you do when people are watching, it's who you are when nobody's looking. The crowd was nodding approvingly. This seemed like it was heading toward a reconciliation. "Dad, would you join me up here?" He stood, basking in what he thought was his moment of vindication. He walked onto the stage and I hugged him. The crowd applauded. But as he reached for the microphone, I held on to it. "Dad, you disowned me publicly 3 weeks ago. You called me a shame to your legacy." My voice was changing now, getting colder, more controlled. "So I think it's only fair that I return the favor." His smile faltered. Something was wrong. "You see, the shame you accused me of," I paused, looking directly into his eyes, "was actually yours." The audience was getting uncomfortable. This wasn't going as expected. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet someone." I gestured to the audience, and Noah stood up. He was clearly visible, clearly resembling my father. "This is Noah Williams. He's 23 years old. He's my half-brother, and until 2 weeks ago, he had no idea that his father abandoned him and his mother for wealth and social status." The audience was murmuring now. My father was trying to get to the microphone, but I had positioned myself between him and his escape. Noah's mother was Adana Daniels. Yes, Daniels. She was my father's first wife. They were legally married when Noah was born. Adana stood up in the audience. Several people gasped. Some of the older congregation members remembered her from years ago. When my father met my mother, Stella Montgomery of the wealthy Montgomery family, he saw an opportunity for power, money, and influence. So he did what any ambitious man would do. The screens behind me lit up with documents, marriage certificates, birth certificates, hospital records, legal annulment papers. He abandoned his wife and infant son. Had their marriage annulled through the Montgomery family lawyers. Had Adana committed to a psychiatric hospital when she tried to fight for her rights. Had Noah legally adopted out to strangers. The screens behind me lit up with documents, birth certificates, hospital records, psychiatric evaluation notes. "But here's the beautiful thing about truth," I continued, my voice building with power. "It always finds a way to surface." Video testimony from Adana began playing on the screens. Her broken but brave voice filled the auditorium, telling her story in heartbreaking detail. My father was panicking now, trying to speak, but the sound system was under my control. "Dad, you taught me that we reap what we sow. You sowed abandonment, betrayal, and lies. You used my mother's family wealth to bury your first family like they never existed." I turned to face him directly. "You made me fatherless when you disowned me. So tonight I'm making you childless in the eyes of the world." That's when the sheriff walked onto the stage, flanked by 2 deputies. "Reverend Dr. Jeremiah Daniels, you're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and perjury in connection with marriage fraud and illegal adoption proceedings." The auditorium erupted in chaos. People were shouting, cameras were flashing, phones were recording. My father was being handcuffed live in front of 2,000 religious leaders and a streaming audience of over 100,000 people. As they led him away, I took the microphone one last time. To anyone who's been silenced, who's been told their truth doesn't matter, who's been convinced that power always wins, this is for you. Justice may be slow, but it's inevitable. Can you believe what just happened? The aftermath is almost as unbelievable as the revenge itself. The video of my father being arrested went viral within hours. Jeremiah Daniels and Catherine Daniels were trending worldwide. News outlets picked up the story, and suddenly everyone wanted to interview the daughter who'd brought down one of America's most powerful pastors. The legal proceedings moved quickly. Once the first charges were filed, other victims came forward. The final count was 3 abandoned families over 15 years, all erased through wealth and influence. My father was sentenced to 5 years in prison for fraud, perjury, and conspiracy related to marriage fraud and illegal adoption. His church empire collapsed overnight. The Global Faith Leadership Council stripped him of all honors and memberships. The university removed his name from the theology building. The Montgomery Family Trust was also investigated, and several family members faced charges for their role in the cover-up. The family's reputation, built over generations, crumbled in months. But for me, the real victory wasn't the legal outcome. It was watching my family heal. Noah moved to Georgia to be closer to his mother and me. He opened his own auto repair shop, and Adana worked there as the office manager when her mental health allowed. She was getting proper treatment now, therapy that actually helped instead of silencing her. I became a victims' rights advocate, specializing in religious abuse cases. I testified before Congress about the need for stronger oversight of religious institutions. My law practice focused exclusively on helping survivors seek justice. 1 year later, Noah and I visited my mother's grave together. I had legally changed my name to Catherine Margaret Williams, taking my mother's maiden name and joining Noah's chosen family name. We stood quietly for a moment, then I placed 2 photos on the gravestone, one of my graduation day, and one of my father being led away in handcuffs. I carried his name with pride for 22 years, I said softly, until I learned what it really meant. Now I give it back to him with shame. Noah put his arm around my shoulders. We begin again with our own names, our own legacy. As we walked away from the cemetery, my phone buzzed with a text from another survivor asking for help. I smiled and answered immediately. My revenge had become something bigger. A movement, a mission, a promise that truth and justice would always find a way to surface, no matter how deep the lies were buried. What would you have done in my situation? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to share this story with someone who needs to hear it. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible true stories of justice and redemption. And remember, your truth matters, your voice matters, and your courage can change the world.